Pope Francis, a figure whose presence radiates warmth and humility, instantly recognizable to millions around the globe. His name has become synonymous with humility, compassion, and a radical love for the poor and the marginalized. He is known for reaching out to those on the fringes of society, offering comfort and hope where it is needed most. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, he grew up in a modest neighborhood, shaped by the struggles and joys of everyday people. From these humble beginnings, he would rise to become the spiritual leader of over 1 billion Catholics worldwide. His journey was one of deep faith, unwavering service, and a steadfast commitment to those often overlooked by society. Whether serving food to the homeless or praying with refugees, he has always placed the needs of others before his own. Francis's papacy marked a significant departure from tradition. He chose a simple lifestyle, often foregoing luxury for humility. He has been a champion of interfaith dialogue, building bridges between communities, and has spoken out boldly for social justice and equality. He has challenged the powerful, comforted the afflicted, and reminded the world of the inherent dignity of every human being, regardless of background or belief. His words and actions have inspired countless people to look beyond themselves and care for others. His papacy has been a breath of fresh air, a beacon of hope in a world often shrouded in darkness and uncertainty. Through his leadership, he has encouraged people everywhere to embrace kindness, forgiveness, and hope. He has spoken truth to power, challenged the status quo, and reminded us all that the true measure of any society is how it treats its most vulnerable members. Pope Francis continues to inspire a global movement for compassion, justice, and peace. Before donning the white cassock of the papacy, Jorge Mario Bergoglio was simply Father Bergoglio, a man whose life and ministry were deeply intertwined with the vibrant, sometimes chaotic and always passionate city of Buenos Aires. Born in 1936 to Italian immigrant parents, he grew up in a modest neighborhood, learning early on the values of humility, hard work, and compassion. The bustling streets of Buenos Aires, with their blend of European elegance and Latin American grit, became the backdrop for his formative years. As a young man, he was drawn to the priesthood not out of a desire for power or prestige, but from a genuine longing to serve others, especially those who were often overlooked by society. He walked the same streets as the people he would later serve, sharing in their joys and sorrows, their hopes and disappointments. His faith was not something distant or abstract. It was lived out in the everyday encounters with the people of his city. He was a priest close to his people, a shepherd who knew the smell of his sheep, as he would later say. In the early mornings, he could be seen walking through the neighborhoods, greeting shopkeepers, listening to the stories of the elderly, and offering a comforting word to those in distress. He celebrated Mass in humble chapels, visited the sick in their homes, and spent countless hours in conversation with young people searching for meaning in their lives. His presence was a source of comfort and hope, a reminder that God had not forgotten the poor and the marginalized. In Buenos Aires, the divide between wealth and poverty was stark. Gleaming skyscrapers and elegant boulevards stood in sharp contrast to the sprawling villas miseria, the shanty towns that house thousands of families struggling to survive. Father Bergoglio did not shy away from these realities. Instead, he made it his mission to be present in the places where suffering was most acute. He walked the muddy paths of the slums, sat with families in makeshift homes, and listened to the stories of those who felt invisible to the rest of society. He witnessed firsthand the struggles of the poor, the marginalized, and those living on the peripheries of society. He saw children growing up without access to education or health care, mothers working multiple jobs to put food on the table, and elderly people abandoned by a system that had no place for them. These encounters were not mere acts of charity. They were moments of profound solidarity. He recognized the dignity of every person he met, regardless of their circumstances. He understood that true ministry required more than words. It demanded presence, empathy, and a willingness to share in the burdens of others. The slums of Buenos Aires became his classroom, teaching him lessons that no seminary could offer. He learned to see Christ in the faces of the poor, to find hope in the midst of despair, and to believe in the transformative power of love and compassion. These experiences would profoundly shape his ministry and his papacy. The lessons he learned in the slums of Buenos Aires became the foundation of his approach to leadership, both as a bishop and later as pope. He understood that the church could not remain isolated from the realities of the world. It had to be a church that went out to the margins, that listened to the cries of the poor, and that worked tirelessly for justice and peace. His time in Buenos Aires taught him the importance of humility, of being a servant rather than a master. He often spoke of the need for pastors to have the smell of the sheep, to be close to their people and attentive to their needs. This was not just a slogan for him, it was a way of life. He spent hours in prayer and reflection, seeking guidance and strength to continue his mission. He was known for his simplicity, his willingness to listen, and his deep sense of compassion. These qualities would later define his papacy and inspire millions around the world. As he rose through the ranks of the church, eventually becoming Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Bergoglio never lost touch with his roots. He became known as the Slum Bishop, a title he wore with pride. Unlike many of his peers, he chose to live simply, foregoing the comforts of a bishop's palace in favor of a modest apartment. He cooked his own meals, did his own laundry, and continued to ride public transportation, often surprising fellow passengers with his humility and approachability. He was a familiar sight on the buses and trains of Buenos Aires, quietly reading his breviary or engaging in conversation with those around him. His decision to live simply was not just a personal preference. It was a deliberate choice to stand in solidarity with the poor. He believed that the church should be a poor church for the poor, a place where everyone, regardless of their social status, could find a home. He spent his days visiting the shanty towns, celebrating Mass in makeshift chapels, and advocating for the rights of the marginalized. He worked closely with community leaders, social workers, and activists, building bridges between the church and the wider society. His commitment to social justice was unwavering, and he was not afraid to speak out against corruption, inequality, and injustice. He challenged the powerful and defended the vulnerable, earning both admiration and criticism. But through it all, he remained steadfast in his mission to serve those most in need. In every aspect of his ministry, Bergoglio embodied the gospel message of love, compassion, and service. He believed that faith was not just a matter of words or rituals, but of concrete actions that made a difference in people's lives. He spent countless hours visiting the sick, comforting the grieving, and offering hope to those who felt abandoned. He organized soup kitchens, shelters, and educational programs for the poor, working tirelessly to address both the immediate needs and the underlying causes of poverty. He encouraged his priests and lay people to do the same, reminding them that the true measure of a Christian was not how often they went to church, but how they treated the least among them. His example inspired a new generation of Catholics to embrace a faith that was active, engaged, and rooted in solidarity with the poor. He often quoted the words of Jesus, "Whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." For Bergoglio, these were not just words, they were a call to action, a mandate to build a more just and compassionate world. In March 2013, the world watched as the College of Cardinals gathered in Rome to elect a new pope. The Catholic Church was at a crossroads, facing numerous challenges both within and outside its walls. Many wondered who would be chosen to lead the church into a new era. When the white smoke finally appeared above the Sistine Chapel, signaling the election of a new pope, there was a sense of anticipation and uncertainty. The announcement that Cardinal Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Buenos Aires had been elected as the 266th Pope sent shockwaves through the Catholic Church and the world. He was the first Pope from the Americas, the first Jesuit Pope, and the first to take the name Francis. His election was seen as a sign of hope, a break from tradition, and a call for renewal. People around the world celebrated, some with tears of joy, others with a sense of curiosity about this humble priest from Argentina. The crowds in St. Peter's Square erupted in applause, waving flags and singing hymns as they awaited his first appearance. News outlets scrambled to learn more about the new pope, sharing stories of his simple lifestyle, his commitment to the poor, and his reputation as a man of deep faith and humility. For many, his election was a moment of grace, a reminder that the church could still surprise and inspire. One of the first surprises came when he announced the name he had chosen, Francis, after St. Francis of Assisi. This choice was deeply symbolic. St. Francis is known throughout the world as the saint of poverty, peace, and care for creation. By choosing this name, Pope Francis signaled his intention to lead the Church in a new direction, one that prioritized the needs of the poor, promoted peace and reconciliation, and called for renewed respect for the environment. He spoke of his desire for a church that was poor and for the poor, echoing the life and teachings of his namesake. In his first moments as Pope, he asked the people to pray for him, bowing his head in a gesture of humility that touched the hearts of millions. He made it clear that his papacy would be marked by simplicity, compassion, and a deep commitment to social justice. He called on Catholics and people of goodwill everywhere to build bridges, to reach out to those on the margins, and to work together for a more just and peaceful world. His words and actions inspired hope, not only among Catholics but among people of all faiths and backgrounds. The world watched with anticipation as this humble priest from Argentina stepped onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica for the first time as Pope Francis. His demeanor was gentle, his smile warm, and his message clear. A call for a church of the poor, for the poor, and with the poor. In that historic moment, he reached out not only to Catholics but to all people of goodwill, inviting them to join him in building a world where no one is excluded, where every person is valued, and where love and compassion are the guiding principles. His journey from the streets of Buenos Aires to the heart of the Vatican was a testament to the power of faith, humility, and service. It was a reminder that true greatness is found not in wealth or power, but in the willingness to serve others, especially those most in need. As Pope Francis began his papacy, he carried with him the lessons of Buenos Aires, the stories of the poor, the struggles of the marginalized, and the hope of a people longing for justice and peace. His life and ministry continue to inspire millions, challenging us all to look beyond ourselves, to reach out to those on the margins, and to build a world where everyone is welcomed, loved, and respected. The years of Pope Francis's papacy were not without their challenges. From the very beginning, he stepped into a role that demanded not only spiritual leadership but also immense personal sacrifice. The world watched as he took on the mantle of the papacy, aware that the journey ahead would be fraught with both visible and invisible burdens. The Vatican, with its centuries-old traditions and expectations, became both a sanctuary and a crucible for the new pope. Every day brought new trials, some anticipated, others entirely unforeseen. The weight of history pressed upon his shoulders, and the eyes of millions looked to him for guidance, hope, and reassurance. In the quiet moments before dawn, as the city of Rome still slept, Pope Francis would often find solace in prayer, seeking the strength to face another day of service. These early hours, filled with reflection and contemplation, became a source of resilience for him, a time to gather his thoughts and renew his commitment to his calling. The world outside the Vatican walls was changing rapidly, and the Church was not immune to these shifts. Social, political, and technological upheavals challenged long-held beliefs and practices, forcing the Church to adapt while remaining true to its core values. Pope Francis understood that his role was not only to preserve tradition, but also to guide the Church through a period of profound transformation. He knew that leadership required both courage and humility, and he strove to embody these qualities in every decision he made. The challenges he faced were not limited to external pressures. Within the Church itself, divisions and disagreements threatened to undermine unity. Pope Francis was acutely aware of the pain caused by scandals and the loss of trust among the faithful. He inherited a church grappling with the internal divisions, facing a rapidly changing world, and still reeling from the impact of scandals. The headlines were often harsh, and the criticism relentless, yet he remained steadfast in his mission. He reached out to those who felt marginalized or forgotten, offering compassion and understanding in place of judgment. His approach was one of inclusivity, seeking to heal wounds and build bridges where others saw only barriers. Pope Francis believed that the true strength of the Church lay in its ability to listen, to forgive, and to embrace all people, regardless of their circumstances. He faced these challenges with unwavering faith, courage, and a steadfast determination to lead with love and humility. His days were long and often exhausting, filled with meetings, ceremonies, and moments of quiet reflection. Yet he never lost sight of his purpose, to serve as a shepherd to his flock, guiding them through times of uncertainty and change. As the years went on, the weight of the world seemed to take its toll. His once sprightly gait became slower, his steps more deliberate. His breathing at times grew labored, a testament to the physical burden of his age and the immense responsibility he carried. The signs of aging were impossible to ignore, and the demands of the papacy only intensified with time. Despite these challenges, Pope Francis's spirit remained unbroken. He drew strength from his faith, from the prayers of the faithful, and from the knowledge that his work was making a difference in the lives of countless people. His eyes, though often weary, still twinkled with compassion and a deep love for humanity. His smile, warm and genuine, continued to radiate hope, reminding the world that even in the face of suffering, the light of faith still shines bright. He found joy in the small moments, a child's laughter, a kind word from a stranger, the beauty of a sunrise over the Vatican. These moments of grace sustained him, giving him the energy to continue his mission. His determination to continue his mission, to be a voice for the voiceless, and a shepherd to his flock, remained undeterred. Even as his health declined, he refused to let physical limitations define his legacy. Instead, he used his own vulnerability as a source of strength, showing the world that true leadership is not about perfection, but about perseverance, empathy, and unwavering commitment to one's values. Through his example, Pope Francis taught us that resilience is not the absence of struggle, but the ability to find meaning and purpose in the midst of adversity. His life became a testament to the power of faith, hope, and love, a reminder that even in our darkest moments, we can choose to shine a light for others. The challenges Pope Francis faced were as complex as they were daunting. The church, once seen as an unassailable institution, found itself at a crossroads. Scandals had shaken the faith of millions, and the world's expectations for change were higher than ever. Pope Francis understood that healing would not come easily or quickly. He listened to the stories of survivors, often in private, offering not just words but the comfort of his presence. He initiated reforms, knowing that true change required more than policy. It demanded a transformation of hearts and minds. The process was slow and resistance was fierce, but Pope Francis remained committed to transparency and accountability. He called upon the church to confront its past with honesty and humility, believing that only through truth could trust be restored. His willingness to face criticism head-on, to admit mistakes and seek forgiveness, set a new tone for leadership. He encouraged open dialogue, inviting voices from all walks of life to participate in the renewal of the church. Through it all, he never lost sight of the individuals behind the headlines, the wounded, the hopeful, the faithful who looked to him for guidance. His compassion was not reserved for the powerful, but extended to the most vulnerable, reminding the world that the church's mission was above all one of love and service. Pope Francis's ministry was defined by his personal touch. He believed that the Church's mission was not confined to grand cathedrals or official ceremonies, but found its truest expression in the simple acts of kindness and compassion that marked his daily life. He visited hospitals, prisons, and shelters, bringing comfort to those who felt forgotten by society. He washed the feet of prisoners, shared meals with the homeless, and listened to the stories of refugees and migrants. These encounters were not mere gestures, but profound expressions of solidarity and love. Pope Francis saw the face of Christ in every person he met, regardless of their background or circumstances. His humility and openness inspired others to look beyond their own needs and reach out to those on the margins. He reminded the world that true greatness is found in service, and that the measure of a leader is not in titles or accolades, but in the lives touched and hearts healed. Through his actions, Pope Francis challenged the Church and all people of faith to become instruments of peace, justice, and mercy. His example called forth the best in humanity, inviting everyone to participate in the work of healing and reconciliation. The physical toll of the papacy became increasingly apparent as the years passed. Pope Francis, once known for his energy and vigor, now moved with greater care and deliberation. The simple act of walking across a room required effort, and public appearances demanded reserves of strength that were not always easy to summon. Yet he refused to let these limitations define him or diminish his commitment to his mission. He accepted help when needed, allowing others to support him in moments of weakness. This vulnerability, far from being a sign of defeat, became a powerful witness to the strength that comes from humility and trust. Pope Francis showed the world that true resilience is not about denying one's frailty, but about embracing it with grace and courage. He continued to lead, to teach, and to inspire, even as his body grew weaker. His perseverance in the face of adversity became a source of hope for all who struggled with their own limitations. Through his example, he reminded us that every life has value, and that dignity is found not in perfection, but in the willingness to keep moving forward, one step at a time. Despite his advancing age and declining health, Pope Francis continued to captivate the hearts and minds of people worldwide. His humility and warmth, visible in every gesture and word, drew people from all walks of life to listen to his message. Even as he faced physical limitations, his spirit remained undiminished, inspiring millions with his unwavering dedication to service and love. His message of mercy, compassion, and inclusivity resonated far beyond the walls of the Vatican, transcending religious and cultural boundaries. Pope Francis reached out to those on the margins of society, reminding the world that every person deserves dignity and respect. His actions spoke as loudly as his words, as he consistently prioritized the needs of the poor, the sick, and the forgotten. His papacy was marked by a series of historic events, each one demonstrating his commitment to building bridges of understanding and promoting peace. Whether attending interfaith gatherings or advocating for dialogue between nations, Pope Francis became a symbol of hope for unity in a divided world. He met with world leaders, urging them to work together to address global challenges such as poverty, climate change, and religious persecution. His diplomatic efforts were tireless, and he never shied away from difficult conversations, always emphasizing the importance of collaboration and mutual understanding. His voice, gentle yet firm, echoed in halls of power and in the hearts of the marginalized, calling for a more just and compassionate world. He championed the cause of the voiceless, urging society to care for those who are often overlooked or ignored, and to build systems that uplift rather than oppress. He challenged us all to see the face of Christ in every person we meet, regardless of their beliefs, background, or circumstances. Through simple acts of kindness and profound gestures of humility, he reminded us that true greatness lies in serving others. He reminded us that we are all interconnected, part of one human family, and that our shared humanity should always come before our differences. In a world often divided by conflict and misunderstanding, Pope Francis's enduring appeal lies in his ability to unite people in hope, compassion, and the pursuit of peace. As Pope Francis entered his late 80s, the world watched with a mixture of reverence and concern. The passage of time, so relentless and impartial, had begun to leave its unmistakable mark on the pontiff. His once brisk stride through the marble corridors of the Vatican had slowed, each step now measured and deliberate, a quiet testament to the years of service and the burdens he had carried. The lines on his face deepened, not just with age, but with the weight of decisions made, prayers whispered in solitude, and the joys and sorrows of a life lived in the service of others. It became increasingly clear, both to those within the Vatican walls and to the millions who looked to him for guidance, that his time on earth was drawing to a close. Yet, in these final months, there was a palpable sense of grace that seemed to envelop him, a serenity that transcended the physical limitations of his aging body. The world in turn seemed to pause, holding its breath as it witnessed the closing chapter of a remarkable life. His public appearances, once frequent and filled with energy, became more rare. When he did emerge before the faithful, it was often with the assistance of aides, his movement slower and more deliberate. The crowds, ever adoring, responded not with disappointment, but with a deepened affection and respect. They saw in his frailty a reflection of their own humanity, and in his perseverance, a model of courage and faith. Even as his physical strength waned, his spirit remained indomitable. There was a quiet dignity in the way he greeted the world, his gentle wave, his warm smile, and the unmistakable twinkle in his eyes. Each appearance became an event, a moment to be cherished, as if the world collectively understood that these were precious glimpses of a beloved shepherd nearing the end of his earthly journey. Despite his declining health, Pope Francis continued to receive visitors from all walks of life. Heads of state, religious leaders, and ordinary people alike found their way to his modest office within the Vatican. There, in the quiet intimacy of private audiences, he offered words of comfort, encouragement, and wisdom. His conversations were marked by a profound attentiveness. He listened deeply, his gaze steady and compassionate. Many left these encounters moved to tears, touched by the sincerity of his concern and the depth of his empathy. He spoke often of hope, of forgiveness, and of the enduring power of love. To the suffering he offered solace, to the doubting reassurance, to the weary a gentle reminder that they were not alone. In these final months, his ministry took on a new dimension, one less about grand gestures and more about the quiet, transformative power of presence. Prayer became the cornerstone of his days. In the early hours of the morning, before the sun had risen over the domes of Rome, he could often be found in the hushed stillness of St. Peter's Basilica, kneeling in silent communion with God. The rosary, worn smooth by years of devotion, rarely left his hands. He prayed not only for himself, but for the church, for the world, and for all those who suffered. These moments of solitude were sacred, a time when he sought solace and strength in his relationship with the divine. Those who witnessed him in prayer spoke of a palpable sense of peace that seemed to radiate from him, as if he were already halfway between this world and the next. In the quiet of the chapel, surrounded by flickering candlelight and the faint scent of incense, he found the courage to face the unknown, trusting in the goodness of God and the promise of eternal life. As the days grew shorter and the evenings longer, Pope Francis often found himself lost in contemplation. He would sit by the window of his Vatican residence, gazing out over the city as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson. In these quiet moments, his thoughts turned increasingly towards eternity, towards the mysteries of life and death, and the legacy he would leave behind. He reflected on the journey that had brought him from the streets of Buenos Aires to the heart of the Catholic Church, on the joys and challenges of his papacy, and on the countless souls he had encountered along the way. There was a sense of gratitude in his reflections, a recognition of the blessings he had received and the love he had been privileged to share. Yet there was also a humility, an awareness of his own limitations, and the unfinished work that would be left for others to carry on. Those closest to him, his friends, his aides, and his confidants, observed a deepening sense of peace and acceptance in his demeanor. They noticed how he seemed to move through each day with a quiet joy, savoring the simple pleasures of companionship, laughter, and shared meals. He spoke often of gratitude, expressing thanks for the kindness of those around him and for the opportunity to serve until the very end. In their presence, he was both teacher and friend, offering gentle guidance and heartfelt blessings. They, in turn, cherished these moments, aware that they were witnessing the final chapter of a remarkable life. There was a sense of intimacy and tenderness in these interactions, a mutual understanding that words were sometimes unnecessary. In the silence there was love, a love that transcended titles and roles, rooted in the shared experience of faith and friendship. Throughout his life, humility had been the hallmark of Pope Francis's character. In these final months, that humility became even more pronounced. He approached each day with a sense of reverence, bowing his head in prayer and accepting the limitations of his aging body with grace. During Mass, his gestures were simple yet profound, a bowed head, a whispered prayer, a serene expression that spoke volumes. He never sought to draw attention to himself, preferring instead to point others towards the love and mercy of God. Those who attended his final liturgies were struck by the depth of his devotion, the sincerity of his faith, and the quiet strength that sustained him. He faced the reality of his mortality not with fear, but with a deep and abiding trust in the goodness of God. In his humility, he found freedom, a freedom to let go, to surrender, and to embrace the mystery of what lay ahead. In the quiet moments of reflection, Pope Francis often held a simple crucifix in his hands, tracing its contours with his fingers as he prayed. The symbol of Christ's sacrifice had always been central to his faith, a reminder of the love that conquers all suffering and death. In these final months, that faith became his anchor, sustaining him through the challenges of illness and the uncertainties of the future. He spoke often of the hope that comes from believing in the resurrection, of the promise that death is not the end but a new beginning. His unwavering belief in the goodness of God and the promise of eternal life gave him strength even as his body grew weaker. To those who visited him, he shared this hope, encouraging them to trust in God's plan and to live each day with gratitude and love. His faith was not a shield against suffering, but a source of meaning and purpose in the midst of it. As the end drew near, there was a sense of readiness in Pope Francis, a quiet confidence that he was prepared to meet his Maker. He spoke of death not as an end, but as a homecoming, a return to the loving embrace of the Father. In his final prayers, he expressed gratitude for the gift of life, for the people he had loved, and for the opportunity to serve. He asked for forgiveness for his shortcomings and for the grace to let go with peace in his heart. Those who were with him in his last days described a sense of lightness, as if he were already being lifted into the presence of God. The sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows seemed to illuminate his face, casting a gentle glow that spoke of hope and transcendence. In the end, Pope Francis surrendered his spirit with the same humility and grace that had defined his life, leaving behind a legacy of faith, compassion, and unwavering trust in the love of God.